Hello, everyone. Hope you had a really nice, fun time last night. I sure did. Anyway, welcome to the session Opt-in Workflows. There'll be a Q&A session right at the end of this, and if you have a question, just raise your hand up and I'll pass over the mic. And yeah, so Opt-in Workflows, Nate Norris, Matt McChesney, give them a round of applause.
Thank you. Yeah, so thank you everybody for coming. I'm actually super stoked. This is possibly the coolest presentation I've ever done at JNUC. It's also the first presentation I've done at JNUC, so sample size. But yeah, so we're going to go over opt-in workflows, deploying centralized workflows in a decentralized IT environment. I'm Nate Norris, University of Virginia.
I'm Matt McChesney.
And a little bit about us before we talk about the cool stuff that you guys are all here for. University of Virginia is a public university based out of Charlottesville, Virginia. We've got a little over 50,000 students, faculty, and staff spread out in a number of different schools, departments, and centers around the state. With that comes some very diverse endpoint needs. And at the University of Virginia, so we're in ITS, which is the central kind of IT department, but it is a decentralized environment. So different schools, different departments will have their own IT staff. So that could be one or two tech support, all the way up through like a full IT staff with CTOs, sysadmins, et cetera. Everybody at this point kind of manages things how they want to manage it. They'll try to meet the standards and policies as best they can in their environments. Some of them have pretty advanced setups. Some of them are using our Jamf service. Some of them are doing SneakerNet. As a university, we've kind of taken a bit of a look recently at the types of data we have and really where our endpoints are. What is the telemetry on the endpoints? Do we have an accurate inventory of the endpoints? That kind of stuff. And from that question, we kind of moved over into like, how do we do this? And for us, it's the Device Security Initiative at University of Virginia, otherwise known as DSI. For our session today, it's really going to be talking about Jamf, but it is a much larger program at the university. We're going over inventory correlation, network architecture refactoring, and for the Mac side, Jamf, and the Windows side, Intune, and trying to build some analogs so that no matter what platform you're in there, what OS you have the ability to kind of get some of these baselines and meet the standards in an easier way. But what we kind of did with that is, on our side, I have ideas, Matt has ideas on how things should be. We have ideas on what the baseline should be, but at the end of the day, we don't know what happens in these different orgs, in these different schools, what their unique needs might be. So we actually started this program by conducting 25 separate listening sessions with IT professionals from those different schools and departments. After that, we kind of gathered that data, pulled it together, and iterated on what we wanted to kind of focus on as our next steps. And from there, we created kind of some internal proof of concepts. So our group built out some changes within Jamf. We invited another group in ITS to help test that. And then after that, we actually invited a couple of the larger schools at the university to join us, so their IT admins could actually come in early, bring their test devices, work on seeing how the things that we've already built would affect them. And it gives them a chance to really have that feedback loop to us to talk about what works well, what they need, what they don't need, so that as we iterate forward, they're really our partners and not just like a customer or another group that's being told, hey, you have to do it this way. We really try to build that partnership with them as we go through this. So right now, we're actually, at the end of October, wrapping up that partner POC. And from there, we're going to be working on our production pilot, where those groups and some other key groups we're going to invite, they'll have the ability to bring in a subset of their production user devices, enroll them into the baselines, and Matt will talk a little bit about that in a minute, but really see what effect these things have on the user's experience, on their day-to-day work, if there's any conflicts or things like that with some of our security baselines. And we'll also be able to take some of that data, look at our security side, and say, like, hey, out of these devices, we're seeing things trending down, things trending up as far as like vulnerabilities, issues, things like that. So that's kind of our next step going forward, probably end of 2024, beginning of 2025, rolling into that, and then kind of opening this whole thing up later on in 2025 to the rest of the university population. But as we went through the listening sessions and the partner POC so far, we came up with really there are some core things that are important to this. One is the baseline configurations need to be something that meet these security standards and policies. In our case, it's not just like, hey, here's the policy, here's the standard, let's meet this, but really trying to figure out what works best. So it's a lot of collaboration with our InfoSec teams on like, hey, should we go with CIS, should we go with NIST? And maybe we do like CIS Lite. We have one group who actually presented here yesterday that is very heavily using AirDrop in their day-to-day business practice. So that's where some of that feedback comes back of, hey, maybe we allow AirDrop, maybe we don't. But really working on those central policies that we can set and other groups can kind of opt in to use them. We also wanted to make sure that these policies were something that as things change, as new vulnerabilities come out, as new kind of recommendations happen, that we can come back on the central side and apply them, modify them, remove them, add new things, test that, and then deploy it out to that greater population of devices that have had their IT admins opt in. And then the other key part here is really the creating of the boundaries between groups. So as I said, the IT population is fairly autonomous. They have their own needs, they have their own desires on what they want to do. So we currently have all of them in one Jamf instance. They each have their own site to manage their devices in. And what we try to do is, as best we can, give them as much empowerment to apply configurations, to apply settings within there. So that's kind of one of our other key areas is really making sure that they have the ability to manage their devices the way they want to, and also grab these kind of central baselines so that we can manage that, they don't have to worry about that. But with all that said, we'll talk next, Matt will go over kind of the technical implementation. So as we said, here's where we want to go, and then it kind of became like how do we want to do this? And in Jamf, we worked on this.
Hello, my name is Matt McChesney. I am the Jamf engineer for University of Virginia ITS. And yeah, so this new initiative came down and we came up with what do we need for DSI in Jamf? Standard security baselines, automatic OS updates, third-party patch management, standard configurations and settings, standard onboard process, standard self-service, and standard Jamf Connect settings, because we wanted to have Jamf Connect as a part of this as well. So these are things you've probably heard all week, that everybody wants all these things. So what I have to figure out how to do is how to make these a common good asset that we can have over multiple sites that can have standards attached to them, and everybody can use them and deploy them at their own speed. And there's so many great tools to do these things. So for automatic updates, we're going to be using the Superman script. You may have heard about that this week. For standard onboarding process, currently in this, we're using the Set Up Your Mac script. So I'll get to that in a little bit. So what we came up with is what we're affectionately calling opt-in workflows. So how are we going to break up all of these tasks into bite-sized chunks that we can make sure our local service providers and site admins can deploy on their own terms, whenever, roll them out as they want, test how they want, so we're not just flipping a big switch at the top level and flooding everybody with brand new settings. And we need to build for the majority here, but recognize that one size does not always fit all. So we have to make it flexible for our folks that have a lot of Mac experience, and then also make it a turnkey solution for folks that don't. And we have some user cases where the devices, there's nobody managing them. So we need to make it good for that as well, where we can put those devices maybe in a site of their own, and they can kind of at least get a standard set of settings and updates and patch management and stuff like that that can be, for the most part, set it and forget it. At least they're getting some type of management. And we also need these things to be easily deployable via as many options as we can. So what I have is I created what I call the custom attribute script, and this is really simple. All it really is it creates a directory and just puts a text file in it. And we use that to go back to an extension attribute and put them in a group. And the great thing about this is I can do this at the top level, and now I can have subgroups inside of each of the sites that I can get to at the top level and use for scoping. Script also includes some logging on the local machine, so we can easily see what custom attributes were applied and when. So if something goes awry, we can always see if it got set correctly or removed. And it's pretty simple. It's just a script, and I have some things that can go into the parameters that we can call it whatever we need to call it, and then that will be caught by an extension attribute later on, and then put them into a smart group. And the other key are my system level policies. This is a trick that I actually learned at my very first JNUC because I asked them, how do I, as a top level Jamf administrator, make policies that everyone can use below in the sites without forcing them to use it, just giving them the option to use it. For instance, one of the first ones I did was, install Microsoft Office. So I have one policy that sits at the top level that's all it does is install Microsoft Office. It's applied to all managed devices, ongoing, but the only way to get it to run is a trigger. So the custom event trigger, we're using that. And then I publish a list of all my custom event triggers to all my site admins, and they can plug those in to their policies, and they can use them in self-service, they can use them in deploying themselves, or they can use them in a provisioning script that we have. And this one here, this is the workflow that I'm going to be showing is going to be our Superman script workflow. So you see this one, the very first thing it does is it copies down all our pretty UVA branding so that we can use that in the Superman script so it looks nice. And then it does the custom attribute, so it puts it in the group, brings down the Superman script, and just runs a quick super on it once. Just that's so in the logs I get it back that said, yes, it installed, yes, it's doing what it's supposed to do. And then it runs an inventory update and then puts that in the right group. And that is what attaches all the necessary configuration profiles to that Superman script to make it run in a standard configuration, which we'll get into those in just a little bit. These can be set. I have what I called site admin self-service. So I have a self-service option that our site admins can go to any machine and log in. And since we have everything going through Intra ID, if they're they get put in a site admins group in Intra ID, they get more self-service options than anybody else. Like just a regular user wouldn't be able to get those options. So I put all of these tools in there so they can go to any computer and run those things. So this is for an opted-in macOS updates with the Superman script. And you can see there is also an opt-out. So they can opt out of it from here if they want. Once it's opted in, you don't see the opt-out until you've opted in. There is also one that actually is like a sub-opt-in to allow upgrades. They can opt into that. And now one just does updates, and then they can opt in to now do upgrades. Those still respect the restriction for your 30, 60, 90-day blockages on whatever you need, but just allows the Superman script to then do upgrades, which that's going to come in handy here shortly. And then I also have a ring 1, which does the same thing as both of those. It just makes it a little more aggressive, where it comes. I think our regular configuration profile for Superman script is 5 days, 5 defers, whichever comes first. And the ring 1 is you're doing it today, and that's the one I put myself on because I'm a glutton for punishment like that. I always like to do things to myself before I do them to others. But that's just one way. That's the site admin self-service. But the custom event trigger allows our site admins to plug this into their own policies, to put it in their own self-service, and they can use it as also in their provisioning, which I'll get to in a little bit to show you what that looks like when we put it all together. So all of these different things that we're doing with these opt-in workflows, you can put them right into provisioning, and things can be opted in all at once. Or some groups may not want to use the Superman script. They might want to use the built-in Jamf update stuff, which isn't, this is a little bit more set it and forget it. The Superman script will run and do what it needs to do without having to worry about, going in and clicking a button every time a new OS update comes out. But there's some that may want that granular control. So maybe we don't opt them into this. They do it a different way. Everybody's going to be held to the same standard. They're going to have to get to the same place. We just have some automated things to help you get there. And if you don't want to use those automated things, you're welcome to do it on your own currently. And as long as we get to the same place, we're good. Extension attributes. So these are some of the extension attributes for the Superman script. But the top two are the custom attributes. And the one further down for ring 1. So we've got one for OS updates enabled. So if you're in that one, you're going to get the Superman script applied. You're going to get the standard set of configuration profiles, and going to be good to go. If you have also upgrades enabled, then that is going to run it in with the upgrades configuration profiles, and now you're going to be eligible to get upgrades. And that can be opted out later on. So like say, here in the next couple of months, maybe we want people to go to Sequoia as fast as possible. Well, we put them in this, and now that becomes part of the regular Superman script workflow, and they get all upgraded. But maybe we want to turn that off before the next big OS comes out next year. Then we just opt them out of that, and they return to regular OS updates, and they just get those with the same thing. And then down there at the bottom, there's one for ring 1, and if you have all three, then you're going to get upgrades as fast as possible. And then we also have some of the other Superman script extension attributes in there just for monitoring and reporting. So the smart groups are fairly easy. It's just we have an extension attribute that goes and reads for that file. And it just, if that setting is enabled, then it gets put it into the opt-in group. Once it's in the opted-in group, and here's some of the configuration profiles that they get. And you can see it's kind of split up there. We do exclude, so if you're in the upgrades, you have to exclude that computer from the regular one, and so on and so forth, so they only get the one that they really need. And it's possible for a computer to be a member of multiple groups in some cases, with the ring 1 just adding the more aggressive enforcement. And there are some system-level policies I have that are also tied to those groups. I have some troubleshooting things in there that can be run against that group. Some one-off things like, I'm always monitoring those groups for any issues via some of those other extension attributes. If something goes wrong, I can either have it rerun or do a check or do an extra inventory update, things like that. So when it comes to these workflows, these are workflows that I am supporting as the top-level admin or top-level engineer as well. So I'm keeping them up to date all the time. I'm making sure they're working. I'm guaranteeing that our site admins have something that's solid as much as possible. So very, turnkey for them. But another very important thing of an opt-in workflow is that you can also opt out, because as we know, things change. Things can, maybe the Superman script at some point in the future is not our best option for this automated workflow, and we need to opt everybody out of that, build a new one, and make a new workflow. And we can do that just like we're opting everybody in. We can do it over time. We don't have to rip it away from everybody immediately. We can build the new one. We can test it. And we can say, okay, we're going to opt everybody out of this and opt everybody into this new workflow. And we can do that for things for testing as well. Another thing that we do with these opt-in workflows, for instance, is our CIS level 1 baselines that we're working on. I have to build right now separate ones for the different macOS versions, and sometimes the guidance changes. And we've got to go in and do a little bit of updating to those when we get new guidance and things. So we don't really have to opt out for that completely, but we can do a test one, make sure it works, and then make those changes on the top level, and folks can get the latest guidance. All right, so putting it all together. So this is our fancy set up your Mac setup. Thank you, Mr. Dan Snelson, for this wonderful script. But what it does is it takes all these workflows and puts them into one thing that we can kind of run as a baseline. And it can go through and do, it does several more things than just these opt-in workflows, because we have some software we need installed, like Qualys and Defender and several other things for our overall DSI compliance. But it can go through and we can customize this so that it does exactly what we need. This one is doing them all. You notice I may have stolen some icons from some other pieces of software because this is POC and I didn't have the icons at the time, but works pretty good. It gives the users a nice feedback, and this can be done in self-service, so it can be run over and over again because the Set Up Your Mac script has some validation in it, and all I have to do is validate these workflows with the file that the policy originally created. If that file is there, you don't need to put it there again. We're good, and it will run through these, especially in some of the software as well. It'll detect if it's there and then not run it again. So you can run this baseline over and over again and just get what you need or what's missing, which is fantastic. Yep, includes opt-in workflows. Yep, and user accessible compliance validation as well. So there's something down towards the bottom, but you don't see it on there. It kind of runs down a little further. It actually does a compliance remediation for CIS level 1 in that as well. And we use the support app. The support app and self-service to give feedback to the end users for either all compliant or the support app has a neat little plugin you can have for CIS compliance and the Jamf compliance editor stuff. And that gives good feedback to the end users themselves, and they can see whether their device is compliant. Yep. And that's all I have for today. That's kind of the workflows there. Any questions?
How do you handle training for your site admins? I've got some that have their 300 certs, but I have some that were hired because they're the dean's son-in-law. And so we've got different skills at our university.
Yeah, I understand. We are currently working on that as a part of our DSI program. One thing is training, and another thing is sometimes Jamf training is good, but sometimes they need that also, institutional training as well, because some of the stuff we're doing is that wouldn't be in the Jamf training. So that's definitely something we're looking at getting better at and doing more of for our folks as well.
We tried to get people to get at least their 100, but there was so much pushback that.
Yeah, we definitely encourage that, people getting the Jamf trainings if they're going to be a site admin for sure. But it's not something we require currently.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other question? Uh-huh.
Hi. So I was wondering, is this just for like a primary campus, or do you also have like branch campuses, and do they operate under your umbrella, or do they have their own separate instances?
Yeah, so we're trying to get away. We do have one other separate instance that is an on-prem Jamf right now that we're trying to see about pulling in, but that's just happening kind of slowly over time. People are deciding that the cloud is a better option, and it's kind of been word of mouth. That may happen quicker in the future, especially with some of this DSI stuff. But we're trying to be the centralized Jamf for most people, and we've got so much stuff built in. We've got a lot of integrations. We're going with Jamf Connect, which is a big thing that a lot of people wanted. We've got a lot of the intra ID stuff done. So it's been good. Most people coming in are very appreciative to the stuff that we've already built, whereas the on-prem Jamf is kind of, here's a site, do your thing. And we're building out some tools. We have schools all over our campus, but we do have some remote as well. And we've got remote workers everywhere. So we've been definitely doing a lot of zero touch, trying to get that working, and that's a part of this as well. Trying to get all these opt-in workflows to work in a zero touch kind of scenario. So it doesn't matter where you are, or as long as you got some internet connection, we can get you managed.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Matt and Nate from the University of Virginia.
Yeah.
Give them a round of applause.